The morning at the base was deceptively calm. Soldiers moved through their routines, rifles slung casually, boots crunching against the gravel, engines humming softly in the distance. The sun had barely risen, painting the perimeter in a golden haze, yet something in the air made her chest tighten. A subtle vibration in the ground, a flicker on the radar, an instinct honed over years of silent observation. She ran through the corridors with urgency, her mind racing faster than her steps. Every second counted. Reaching the command center, she burst in, her voice sharp, slicing through the hum of idle chatter. "Sir, you need to listen. An attack is imminent." Less than 10 seconds, the commander looked up from his paperwork, the corners of his mouth curling into a dismissive smile. "You're overreacting. Calm down," he said, chuckling. She froze for just a moment, assessing the man who had no idea how close they were to disaster. Then the alarm screamed, piercing, insistent, and the distant horizon erupted in fire and smoke. Explosions rattled the walls, soldiers screamed, and the base descended into chaos in a heartbeat. 9 seconds. That's all it took for her warning to transform from a frantic plea into reality, leaving destruction and terror in its wake. Hours earlier, she had been scanning the perimeter, analyzing every movement, every signal. The sensors had flickered in subtle patterns, vehicles moved where they shouldn't have, radio chatter carried coded messages only she could decipher. Years of training had taught her to trust instincts when others saw none. She had survived operations where every second was life or death, missions where hesitation meant annihilation. But here, on her own base, her warnings were ignored, brushed off by the commander who relied on ego over intuition. Her calm, meticulous observations were met with laughter, and yet she remained poised. She had anticipated this, calculated the seconds, and prepared for the inevitable. The difference between survival and catastrophe rested on her decisions alone. As the smoke began to rise and the alarms blared, she understood that preparation, vigilance, and courage ignored or not would define who lived and who didn't. The morning was calm, deceptively so, with sunlight stretching across the base and soldiers performing routine drills. Inside the surveillance room, her eyes scanned every monitor, every sensor feed, every faint anomaly. Something wasn't right. Vehicles moved erratically along the perimeter, signals flickered, and coded chatter on the radio hinted at an imminent strike. Heart racing, she sprinted through the base corridors toward the command center, every step echoing urgency. Bursting in, she shouted, "Sir, an attack is imminent. Less than 10 seconds to prepare." The commander glanced up, eyebrows raised, a smirk forming on his face. "You're overreacting," he said dismissively. She froze, assessing the man who had the power to act but refused to see the danger. Her instincts screamed, every muscle tensed, yet the commander laughed, waving her off like a minor annoyance. Around him, soldiers continued their routine, oblivious. She took a breath, her calm precision unshaken by his arrogance. Every training exercise, every high-stakes mission she had survived flashed in her mind. 9 seconds. That's all they had. She didn't need approval. She needed action. But in the face of arrogance, action would come at a cost because the threat was real, and it was already seconds away from obliterating the base. The world seemed to slow as she calculated the exact moment of impact. 9 seconds. 9 precious seconds to mitigate disaster. Sensors screamed warnings, alarms flickered, but the commander remained frozen in disbelief, staring at her like she was exaggerating. Soldiers went about routine drills, rifles slung lazily, unaware that the first wave of fire would reach them in moments. She moved swiftly, issuing low, sharp commands to coordinate what little precaution could be taken in the tiny window. Doors were unlocked, personnel guided to safer zones, and fire suppression units were primed, all while the commander remained skeptical, his pride blinding him to the imminent destruction. A faint rumble began in the distance, subtle at first, but growing louder with every heartbeat. Her eyes tracked every movement, every shadow, calculating trajectory, timing, and probability of survival. Sweat trickled down her temple, yet her expression remained calm, focused. Around her, soldiers started noticing the tension, glancing toward the horizon, sensing what she already knew. Disaster was coming. Her mind raced through contingency protocols, her hands flying over controls and communications. Each second ticked away with terrifying precision. The countdown wasn't abstract, it was a measure of life and death. When 9 seconds ended, The base would either crumble or survive because of her rapid decisions. The first explosion ripped through the northern perimeter, shattering windows and sending plumes of smoke skyward. Soldiers screamed, diving for cover, their drills replaced by chaos. The camera pans across the base, fire-consuming buildings, alarms blaring, equipment exploding under intense heat. Debris flew in every direction as secondary detonations followed within seconds. Yet amidst the chaos, she remained poised, moving methodically through the smoke and dust. Her voice cut through the panic, commanding evacuation, directing personnel to safety, prioritizing lives over her own fear. She coordinated firefighting efforts, sealing critical areas, shutting down volatile fuel lines before they could ignite further devastation. The commander stumbled through the carnage, realization dawning too late. He had ignored her warning, laughed at her precision, and now faced the consequences. Soldiers around him, initially terrified, followed her lead, finding focus in her calm demeanor. The explosions continued, fire licking the edges of the base, yet her instructions saved hundreds from certain death. Each decision she made, every calculation executed under extreme pressure, minimized casualties and preserved strategic points within the base. What began as ridicule transformed into awe. Her composure under fire, honed through countless near-impossible missions, made the difference between total annihilation and survival. Amidst the inferno, she became the pivot of survival. Her hands moved swiftly over communication devices, directing reinforcements and emergency medical teams. Soldiers who had once mocked her now followed every instruction, awestruck by the precision and clarity of her commands. Smoke choked the air, flames reflected on her determined face, yet she remained uncheckable. She guided personnel through evacuation corridors, using her knowledge of the base layout to circumvent areas most at risk. Fire suppression units responded under her direction, controlling secondary fires before they could reach fuel depots and ammunition storage. Each decision was a calculation: where the flames would spread, where soldiers were most vulnerable, what needed immediate containment. The commander, now humbled, watched helplessly as she orchestrated a rescue operation that saved hundreds. Her eyes scanned every corner, anticipating hazards before they materialized, every action deliberate, precise, and effective. In those critical minutes, she transformed from an underestimated officer into the lifeline of the base. Her calmness amidst total chaos, her ability to act when everyone else hesitated, became the difference between catastrophic loss and organized survival. She didn't seek praise, but in the eyes of every soldier, her heroism was undeniable. As the smoke cleared and the fires were contained, the base lay scarred but intact. Soldiers emerged from cover, shaken, grateful, and wide-eyed at the destruction narrowly avoided. The commander approached her, humility replacing arrogance, voice low. "I should have listened. You saved countless lives today." She didn't reply, only nodded, her focus already on assessing the remaining threats and ensuring no residual danger remained. Around her, soldiers silently acknowledged her skill, courage, and composure under pressure. What had started as dismissal and mockery transformed into respect and admiration. Her vigilance, her preparation, and her instincts previously ignored had prevented total catastrophe. Narration underscores the lesson. Instinct and experience, even when dismissed by authority, can mean the difference between survival and disaster. As she walks through the charred remnants of the base, the camera pans out to reveal the scale of destruction, narrowly averted, smoke curling into the dawn sky. She is uncelebrated but immortalized in the lives she saved. The narrator concludes, "Warnings are only as strong as the ears that hear them." Courage, vigilance, and decisive action can turn seconds into salvation. And sometimes, one voice is enough to prevent annihilation. Her figure fades into the morning light, calm amidst the wreckage, a quiet hero whose foresight changed the course of fate. The smoke still rose in thick, curling plumes as the base began to settle from the chaos. Soldiers emerged from cover, wide-eyed, coughing and shaken, but alive. Equipment lay scorched, walls cracked, and fire-blackened debris littered the compound, yet the worst had been averted. She stood amidst it all, calm and composed, scanning the area for any lingering threats, her posture precise, almost surgical. The commander approached cautiously, humility in his eyes replacing the arrogance from mere minutes before. "I should have listened," he admitted quietly, voice low with regret. "You saved countless lives today." She only nodded, her focus never wavering from the task at hand, checking communications, confirming all personnel were accounted for, and ensuring that no further danger remained. Around her, soldiers who had doubted her instincts now looked on with silent reverence. The base had survived because of her vigilance, quick thinking, and unwavering courage in the face of imminent destruction. As the sun rose higher, casting golden light over the scarred compound, the narrator concludes, "Warnings are only powerful when heard, courage is proven in action, and one decisive voice can avert disaster." In those critical moments, her foresight became the difference between survival and annihilation. She walked away from the wreckage, quiet, uncelebrated, but immortalized in the lives she had saved.